I was really sweating back there when the speakers weren't working. I'm not as loud as Paul and Greg are. Y'all are going to be getting down here real close. I preached in Guyana one time without the benefit of a microphone, and so I told some guys when I got back, they were like, I'd have liked to have seen that. So last week we started in on the, you have heard it said, but I tell you, passages in Matthew 5. So we made it through the anger and adultery or lust and divorce passages. So today we're going to pick up in verse 33. Again, you have heard that it was said to the people long ago, do not break your oath, but keep the oaths you have made to the Lord. But I tell you, do not swear at all, either by heaven, for it is God's throne, or by the earth, for it is his footstool, or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king. And do not swear by your head, for you cannot make even one hair white or black. Simply let your yes be yes, and your no, no. Anything beyond this comes from the evil one. From Leviticus 19, verse 12. Do not swear falsely by my name, and so profane the name of your God. I am the Lord. And Deuteronomy 23, 21 through 23 says, if you make a vow to the Lord your God, you shall not delay fulfilling it, for the Lord your God will surely require it of you, and you will be guilty of sin. But if you refrain from vowing, you will not be guilty of sin. You shall be careful to do what has passed your lips, for you have voluntarily vowed to the Lord your God what you have promised with your mouth. So the Old Testament is full of oaths. Many of them bound someone to do something quite regrettable. We see stories of, I remember the one that comes to mind in the wilderness with the man that vowed to sacrifice to the Lord the first thing that he saw, and it was his daughter. So there's, but you see, the putting the hand under the thigh, and there was lots of oath making in the Old Testament. And when they invoked God into it, they were essentially saying, God will be the judge of whether I keep this promise or not, whether it's an oath between men or an oath between man and God. And they, said, God will be the one that punishes me if I fail to keep this oath. By the time we get to Jesus' time, their oath-making had become an art. There were things that they could swear on that meant, I don't intend to keep this promise at all, but if I swear on this other thing, then I'm bound to my oath. And it was as fine as, they swearing by the temple or the gold on the temple, swearing by the altar or the sacrifice on the altar. And it was ridiculous. And Jesus saying, no more playing those games. If you say you're going to do something, then you do it. And it should be as simple as that. So one thought this morning is, how are we at keeping our word? I was reading some thoughts this week on this topic, and they, some Christian groups take this teaching to mean I can't take public office because I won't swear on a Bible. I won't swear on a Bible in court, So they changed the phrase that they use. They just promise to tell the truth, but they don't swear on that. And some of them would, suggested if this is people that we don't know, that we don't have credibility with, then it's acceptable to make some sort of promise that they would, find credibility in. But if it's between friends, people that we're supposed to have credibility with, and we still feel the need to make a promise, do your kids say, when you tell them you're going to do something, do they say, "You promise"? If your boss or a coworker, expects that of you, sometimes it's that people have let them down, and they need some sort of reassurance because nobody in their life has ever kept their word. But as Christians, we should be known for whatever we say we're going to do or not do, that's the case. Any thoughts, comments, questions?
It's interesting just in the length of time in my lifetime, what a handshake meant. And my husband, Charles, is still in that mindset so much of the time, even when he's selling his used cars, that there's not people on the other end that understand this handshake.
Right.
And that promise.
Yeah.
What they say they're going to do.
Yeah. So Joey was talking about, if recent history, handshake. You can make an agreement on handshake, and that was your word. It was going to happen. Didn't need a contract. You had a handshake, and now you got to have a contract that an attorney is written so it'll hold up in court because too many people don't consider their handshake agreement as binding. So another.
I was just going to say, it just makes me think, it is interesting that there were, levels of truth-telling, I guess, and I understand the legal because then it's documented and, they can refer to it. But it just, it really is, it is kind of silly. And I was just thinking, do people say, promise? Do you promise? Because I hope they don't have to. But it makes me think about traffic signs. It makes me giggle when I see a traffic sign and then there's something else under it. I think it's Pebble Beach, there's a stop sign and then they added something else like, you must come to a full and complete stop. And I thought, that's what the stop sign says. And in my neighborhood, there's a speed limit sign and then underneath it, it says high enforcement area. And I'm like, it should just be the one thing, and we really needed this sign.
If you're on this street, do not speed. We will write you a ticket. There's, and then when we, get a driver's license, we agree to obey by the laws. Sort of, right? Turn back to Matthew 5 here.
It seems like there's an awful lot of people trying to get through loopholes.
There are, yes.
In this, and he's like, that doesn't make it right if you find a loophole.
Right. Yes, and the loopholes of the swearing that was worked into the Jewish culture, and a lot of that was defined by those in power, and we don't see any of that today, fortunately, right? People writing the laws, with little loopholes in there to their benefit.
Growing up as a child, we didn't want to. We'll make a promise, but we have our hands behind our back and we cross our fingers. In other words, it really doesn't mean what I'm saying.
Yep. Yeah. Pinky promise, or cross your fingers. Yeah. Yeah. We've had our opportunities to play our own games. So in Matthew 5, starting in verse 38, "You've heard that it was said, 'Eye for eye and tooth for tooth,' but I tell you, do not resist an evil person. If someone strikes you on the right cheek, turn to him the other also. And if someone wants to sue you and take your tunic, let him have your cloak as well. If someone forces you to go 1 mile, go with him 2 miles. Give to the one who asks you, and do not turn away from the one who wants to borrow from you." So Jesus, there's a couple of different thoughts wrapped up in this little paragraph, and the eye for an eye thing is, and that's straight out of the Old Testament, in the law, and not twisted whatsoever. Exodus, this is a rather lengthy reading, but I think it will give you a good idea of God's intentions here. This is in Exodus 21, starting in verse 12, is all the rules around what to do in the case of a personal injury. So anyone who strikes a man and kills him shall surely be put to death. However, if he does not do it intentionally, but God lets it happen, he is to flee to a place I will designate. But if a man schemes and kills another man deliberately, take him away from my altar and put him to death. Anyone who attacks his father or his mother must be put to death. Anyone who kidnaps another and either sells him or still has him when he's caught must be put to death. Anyone who curses his father or mother must be put to death. If men quarrel and one hits the other with a stone or with his fist, and he does not die but is confined to bed, the one who struck the blow will not be held responsible if the other gets up and walks around outside with his staff. However, he must pay the injured man for the loss of his time and see that he is completely healed. If a man beats his male or female slave with a rod and the slave dies as a direct result, he must be punished. But he is not to be punished if the slave gets up after a day or two, since the slave is his property. If men who are fighting hit a pregnant woman and she gives birth prematurely, but there's no serious injury, the offender must be fined whatever the woman's husband demands and the court allows. But if there is serious injury, you are to take life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burn for burn, wound for wound, and bruise for bruise. If a man hits a manservant or maidservant in the eye and destroys it, he must let the servant go free to compensate for the eye. And if he knocks out the tooth of a manservant or maidservant, he must let the servant go free to compensate for the tooth. If a bull gores a man or a woman to death, the bull must be stoned to death and its meat must not be eaten. But the owner of the bull will not be held responsible. If, however, the bull has had the habit of goring and the owner has been warned but has not kept it pinned up and it kills a man or woman, the bull must be stoned and the owner must also be put to death. However, if payment is demanded of him, he may redeem his life by paying whatever is demanded. This law also applies if the bull gores a son or daughter. If the bull gores a male or female slave, the owner must pay 30 shekels of silver to the master of the slave, and the bull must be stoned. If a man uncovers a pit or digs one and fails to cover it, and an ox or a donkey falls into it, the owner of the pit must pay for the loss. He must pay its owner, and the dead animal will be his. If a man's bull injures the bull of another and it dies, they are to sell the live one and divide both the money and the dead animal equally. However, if it was known that the bull had the habit of goring, yet the owner did not keep it pinned up, the owner must pay animal for animal, and the dead animal will be his. From Leviticus 24. Starting in verse 17. If anyone takes the life of a human being, he must be put to death. Anyone who takes the life of someone's animal must make restitution, life for life. If anyone injures his neighbor, whatever he has done must be done to him. Fracture for fracture, eye for eye, tooth for tooth. As he has injured the other, so he is to be injured. Whoever kills an animal must make restitution, but whoever kills a man must be put to death. You are to have the same law for the alien and the native born. I am the Lord your God. And Deuteronomy 19. Starting in verse 15. One witness is not enough to convict a man accused of any crime or offense he may have committed. A matter must be established by the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. If a malicious witness takes the stand to accuse a man of a crime, the 2 men involved in the dispute must stand in the presence of the Lord before the priest and the judges who are in office at the time. The judges must make a thorough investigation, and if the witness proves to be a liar, giving false testimony against his brother, then do to him as he intended to do to his brother. You must purge the evil from among you. The rest of the people will hear of this and be afraid, and never again will such an evil thing be done among you. Show no pity, life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot. So that last passage is a little bit different in that you didn't have to be the one to do the action. You could just be lying to get somebody in trouble. And whatever punishment you were trying to have done to them will be done to you. No one can accuse God of being soft on crime. The Old Testament law clarified 2 things. If you are reckless, careless, or malicious towards someone else or their property, whatever you do will be done to you. I saw it's kind of the reverse of the golden rule, right? The golden rule is whatever you would, want someone to do for you, do unto them. But you reverse that and say, whatever you decide is okay to do to somebody else, that should be done to you. So if you're thinking about being mean to somebody, that might be something to think about too. The law also put limits on retribution. In anger, we tend to escalate retribution, right? Someone does something to me, I'm going to, someone breaks my finger, I'm going to break their arm. Somebody, scratches my car, I'm going to slash their tires. Or, we just get carried away, and we see this in world events all the time, just this constant, I kind of, I'm going to teach you a lesson. I can do more to you than you can do to me. God permitted a punishment in keeping with the offense, but no more than that. But retribution was not mandatory, even in the Old Testament law. So I have these verses here. So Leviticus 19:18, do not seek revenge or bear a grudge against anyone among your people, but love your neighbor as yourself. Proverbs 20, verse 22, do not say, I'll pay you back for this wrong. Wait for the Lord, and he will avenge you. So seems like the courts, the justice system, had responsibility and bounds put on them. But as individuals, I think we're called to forgive quickly. A lot of times we see people who have, lost someone or something. They look for the courts to, like they're going to have some sort of closure when the offender's found guilty and punished, as they see fit. But that seldom, really provides the healing, and it requires us finally realizing we've got to forgive, regardless. Any thoughts or comments on Jesus saying, so, he started, the law does say eye for eye and tooth for tooth, but he says not to resist an evil person, to be, if they strike you on the cheek, turn to them the other cheek also. If they want to take your cloak, give them your shirt too. Yeah.
Would you say this is more like last week? It was kind of like, you've heard this, but I say, but really it had also been said. They just forgot about it. Would you say that this is the same? That like we just read the Leviticus, don't seek vengeance. It just wasn't as, it's just not what everybody grabbed and ran with, kind of a thing. So it's not a totally new thing for them, but maybe they hadn't, because that's a really hard, that's a hard passage to, it's one of the ones that I think, did he really mean that? Did he mean that literally? Do we have to, and at work we were talking this week about trust the process, and to me this is a perfect example. It is not what we think we should do at the time. Me, personally, it's not what my instinct is. It's not what I feel like, we should do. But if I trust him, then, and do that, not thinking about what I think I should be doing, that's what I have to remind myself is, he said it, because stuff like this happens all the time.
Yeah.
All the time.
All the time. So what's the world tell us to do when somebody does something to us? Okay, get even, right?
And like you said, do it. In fact, I have students who say, my parents say, do it back, but worse.
Yeah.
So they'll leave you alone.
Yeah. And so, and what's the world say if we don't do that? You're weak.
Doormats.
You're going to be a doormat. You're going to be bullied. You're going to be pushed around. You got to stand up for yourself, kid. All right? Don't let them push you around like that. So we teach our kids from an early age not to be pushed around, to fight back, defend yourself. And Jesus says, you're not going to have peace in my kingdom if that's the way you approach wrongs done to you. He talks about if someone compels you to go 1 mile, go with them 2. Well, that was a Roman thing. A Roman soldier could make you carry their equipment for 1 mile, but not more than 1 mile. And Jesus said, tell them I'll carry it too. I've thought,
I think it draws attention to you. When you don't seek the revenge, it draws attention to Jesus. Because then those people wonder, why didn't you retaliate? Why didn't you get even or get back? It makes them question and wonder because they expect you to do the opposite. But when you don't, then they question. And then it's more about Jesus and it's not
but I'm strong enough that it doesn't matter what you do to me because I've got something else.
Yeah.
For sure.
And a lot of times you will get, if you're not defending yourself, you will find other people, rally to your defense to make that person feel bad for, it's like, they've done nothing to you. Why you can, carry on? There are times, I've thought about this. I have a problem with, fortunately I don't spend much time on the road but when we lived in Lake Dallas, I was driving from the Galleria to Lake Dallas every day. And it's not a bad drive, 6 in the morning when there's not any traffic. But the times I was driving, it's terrible. And there's wrecks or something almost every day. And, so it's taken me, all this time to get home, and I just wanted to be home. But I developed this habit of watching my rearview mirror and watching people coming up from behind me, trying to maneuver around and, getting off where they could to cut up in front of me. Their time's more important than my time, of who they think they are. Some of us have seen it in airport lines or, Six Flags. There's people are always trying to work their way up the line a little bit. But if you just can have the humility and patience to say, what, if they're in that big a hurry, I'll just let them go. You have at least got a peace about that because they didn't take it from you. Like Carol's saying, you gave it to them. And your mindset is completely different. Any other thoughts? Right. So, yeah. Thank you. So she was saying Jesus told his followers these things are going to happen. He's not talking in hypotheticals. This is stuff we all experience all through life. And he's wanting us to, prepare our minds to think differently than the world. So when they do happen, we're ready to respond as Christ would respond, not as the world has trained us to respond, so that there is a difference, so that they do ask. Like Donnell was pointing out too, that you responded differently than everybody else in my life responds. Why? Why didn't you hit me back? Why aren't you fighting? Why don't I have to look over my shoulder every time you're around? What's different about you? So Jesus also, in this paragraph, calls us to be open-handed. He says to give to the one who asks you. Do not turn away from the one who wants to borrow from you. So Old Testament teaching on this Deuteronomy 15. Verses 7 through 11. If there is a poor man among your brothers in any of the towns of the land that the Lord your God is giving you, do not be hard-hearted or tight-fisted towards your poor brother. Rather be open-handed and freely lend him whatever he needs. Be careful not to harbor this wicked thought. The 7th year, the year for canceling debts, is near, so that you do not show ill toward your needy brother and give him nothing. He may then appeal to the Lord against you, and you will be found guilty of sin. Give generously to him, and do so without a grudging heart. Then, because of this, the Lord your God will bless you in all your work and in everything you put your hand to. There will always be poor people in the land. Therefore, I command you to be open-handed toward your brothers and toward the poor and needy in your land. And in Psalm 122, it says, good will come to those who are generous and lend freely, who conduct their affairs with justice. So in the passage in Deuteronomy, there's talking about, so every 7th year, slaves were to go free, all debts were to be canceled. So everybody starts with a clean slate every 7 years. So imagine the temptation of, somebody comes to you and says, I need to borrow $10,000. And it's June of the 7th year. You say, there ain't no way in the world I'm getting this $10,000 back. Oh, come see me in February, right? I know I'm not the only one that would, do the numbers on that. But God said, do not be hard-hearted towards your brothers. If they need it, you give it to them, whether you ever get it back or not. And if you're generous that way, I'll be generous with you. You will not be lacking. And Jesus is reiterating that idea here that especially within the church, that people should not be in need in the church. That we should give freely. If someone just wants a loan and wants to pay you back because they feel better about that, that's okay. If someone needs something and you can just give it to them, then we should be doing that. I remember a friend of mine at work. He became he was a heathen before he met Christ, came to know Christ. But afterwards, he really opened his heart. He was very generous to people, and he would loan people money. He was a single guy making good money. He had money, and he would loan and help people out. And but when somebody and he would tell them, you don't have to pay me back, but he expected that they would, and they might even have said that they would. And I remember one girl that he loaned to in particular that didn't, and he was expecting her to, and it was several $1,000s, and it ate him up for the longest time until he finally was like, I just need to let it go, don't I? I'm like, yeah, you said she didn't have to pay it back, and you gave it freely. You've got to let that go. So having that generous spirit and trusting that God will He's blessed us, and if we're generous, He will continue to bless us. Is an important thing to keep in mind. Thoughts on either one of those?
It's amazing how many families have conflict because of this situation. Things as small as $100, and it divides a family. And God knows that, and He's sparing us from that. You know, I've always heard if you can't afford to never get it back, don't give it. You know, but just like you said, like Jesus, just give it. But it's sad when there's conflict over anything that's like this, and God is sparing us from that. You know, once again, all the things that He says are really better for us in our relationships.
Yep. Yeah, this can be a big problem in families. It can be a big problem in churches because we see each other as family, and we feel like, you know, so and so hasn't, you know, they said they'd pay me back and they haven't, or you know, I gave to them, they've wasted it, and I'm not giving them anything else, and it can be hard. And I don't think He's telling us, you know, like if you got a taker that just wastes everything, I don't think He's telling us, you know, just, you know, leave a pile of money out there for them to, you know, we do have to have, you know, that we can hold them to be accountable to what God's providing them through us.
There's a difference between being generous and enabling somebody. And there's a big difference.
You know, but when there's a genuine need there, we should be generous. Oh, goodness! I spent more time on these two than I budgeted. Because we're almost out of time and got a lot of time to spend on love for your enemies. So we're gonna wrap up right there for today, and we'll get into to love your enemies next week. We'll probably spend the entire class on that. That's something I really think we could really spend a lot of time thinking seriously on. Any last thoughts, questions? No? All right, let's pray. Father, we thank you again for being able to be together, to study your word. Father, this time looking at Jesus' teachings, pray that it will challenge us to reconsider how we think, how we act. Father, there are things that are so contrary to how the world teaches, and we tend to kind of create caveats or kind of limit what we hear what Jesus is saying rather than what He actually said, and just pray that we will grow to trust these teachings more, that if we do the things that are not natural, that come hard and are contrary to the world, that you've told us to do them because you know that they're better for us in the end. Just help us to grow to be more like your Son. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you all.